tips and tricks that I would do to guide someone through that moment. But some of my favorites are first kind of identifying a new mantra and something that you can believe. So for instance, let's say that you are afraid of asking for help in the workplace because deep down you're afraid that if you ask for help, somebody's going to realize you don't deserve to be there. Once we realize that that's what's going on, we can't just snap our fingers and you can't just have this new identity of I'm the type of person that asks for help when I need it. That's not going to work. So what we do instead is we come up with something that is true, which might be something as simple as I'm learning to ask for help when I need it most. Or I'm learning to use the resources around me so that I can work more efficiently, right? Come up with something that you can get behind and begin telling yourself that new thought. Because if you've been identifying yourself as I'm the type of person that doesn't ask for help for the last 25 years in your career, it's going to be really hard to change. And we need to come up with some sort of new identifying sentence that you can get behind.
These are just a few of the tactics that Sani shares with clients, the ways that she shifts their approach to achieve the outcomes they want. In many cases, though, the fear of failure requires more than a new approach. It requires a new mindset.
When fear of failure comes up, either because it's happened in the past and they've experienced it, or because maybe they haven't yet. They've had a life where they've just sort of continually taken the next step and it's happened and it's unfolded. And this fear of failure has become almost like this giant monster that they're avoiding at all costs because they feel like they never even have failed. So for somebody who has experienced a big failure, for instance, I have a client who started a business that failed in his mind. It tanked in a way that deeply almost caused trauma for him. And it was really impeding his ability to move forward with his next career step. And so, one of my favorite questions in that moment is just like, what if every single thing in your life up to this moment was leading you to where you're going next? And it's just this total reframe of like, what if that happened for a reason? What if everything, all of the failures in your life were leading you to this moment and educating you somehow or guiding you somehow so that whatever comes next, you're way more prepared for it. And I find even just a simple reframe like that can be incredibly helpful.
What some people don't realize is that Sani shares a love of rock climbing with her partner, free solo climber Alex Honnold. And she's out there on the mountain with him nearly every weekend, bouldering, scrambling, rising, and falling too. Listen as Sani helps us understand how every fall is just leading us to an ultimate success.
Climbing is one of those sports where you fail far more often than you succeed. When you think about traditional sport climbing or bouldering, where your goal is to, get to the top of a route, you fall way more times than you send it, than you get to the top. And so it's a constant process of being like, what if every failed attempt was leading me to today? And today I can do it. I think that that self-coaching process is always more difficult. It's so much harder to turn your own work inward. I feel like I've worked with coaches and I always find it incredibly helpful just to get that small outside perspective. So I think that idea of just like, what if that happened for a reason and has prepared you even better for what's to come. Another strategy for fear of failure, is the simple mantra, like, what if there were no mistakes, only learning opportunities? And it sounds kind of cheesy. And, I think there's always a little bit of a resistance when we hear that phrase of like, yeah, it's an opportunity. But really deeply believing, what if I couldn't fail? I could only be confronted with different learning opportunities, and just operating from that place that like, this is all trial and error. I find as adults, like, we are terrified of trial and error. We'll go into something that's brand new, and if we're not immediately innately good at it, we don't want to do it. Whereas as kids, you fail all the time. That's part of your daily experience is constantly trial and error. And you're very comfortable with that, and you expect that to be part of the process. And at some point we lose that. We lose that ability to see failure as simply part of the process.
But what about Sani's own fears? When Sonny met Alex, she knew he was determined to achieve the life-threatening goal of climbing El Capitan without ropes, and there was nothing she could do about it. But rather than fight Alex on the issue and put herself first, she made the decision to support his dream, despite her own fears. Here she is again, describing how she felt on the day of Alex's climb.
I let every fear that I'd never let enter my brain for the last 2.5 years enter on that drive. And I don't know why. I don't know why it was that moment. I don't know why it didn't hit me before the first attempt. It was weird. It hit me on the day I drove out of the valley right before he actually decided to do it. And it was awful. It was a really painful experience, and I was terrified. But the morning of the actual climb, there was a sense of calm. And I think the sense of calm was just a total relinquishing of control. At this point, it was unfolding, and all I could do was wait. There was nothing I could do. There was nothing he could do. It was happening. And so it created a sense of peace and calm that hadn't existed up to that point. So I knew roughly how it was going. I knew before each hard part of the climb, but mostly my friends just distracted me. I mean, it was funny, but they put a broom in my hands and they were like, clean the kitchen, make yourself useful, stop sitting around. Like it was just like a very no frills environment. Like you just need to distract yourself. It's out of your control. And so I cleaned that morning.
The Tony Robbins Podcast is a collection of interviews and stories and is produced by the Tony Robbins team. Copyright Robbins Research International.